Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers beat the Portland Trailblazers 114-106 without Anthony Davis to improve to 19-14 and 6th in the Western Conference, also 11-5 at home. The Lakers have won 7 of 10 games, and despite some, I would say, up and down play during that stretch, they have been winning more than they've been losing and making up ground in the standings. And overall, I think things continue to be trending in the right direction, a positive direction. But a lot to touch on today. We're going to be going through LeBron's big night, Max Christie's career night, Christian Koloko stepping up, and LA continuing to struggle in their small ball lineups. And I want to add a couple of new segments into the post-game reaction. So I've been doing typically just the 3 takeaways, and then we go straight into the Q&A. But I want to add an overarching takeaway, which tends to just kind of be a big picture look at the team and what's going on. I kind of do that anyway before I go into the takeaways, but just wanted to officially brand it. Very sexy branding there with overarching as the name. And then stat of the night, which to me is just one thing from the box score that really stood out and I think is emblematic of a trend or some sort of bigger picture takeaway. So for me, overarching takeaway tonight is this was a pedestrian win, right? Like this was not quite, I wouldn't call it like a great or good win, but I also wouldn't call it a bad win. Like LA was shorthanded without Anthony Davis. This was a team in Portland that, while they are one of the worst teams in the league, they fit the profile of a team that could give the Lakers some problems with, the quality or at least effective center play, right? In DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan. Like they've been playing pretty well collectively. Robert Williams didn't end up playing tonight. As an aside, Clingan is like, outside of Wemby, probably the biggest player I've seen this season. He just looked like a mountain out there, and him next to Koloko and Hayes, he made those guys look like they're like 6'8". So he's just a beast. But like they had that, and then they have Kamara and Sharp and even Simons and just like they have Scoot Henderson. Like they have a lot of perimeter athleticism and length and guys who can make plays on both sides of the ball. So I think that they have some interesting like individual pieces, but the type of profile that almost like a Detroit, where they got the big men in the middle and the athletic perimeter guys. And they did give the Lakers some problems, certainly tonight for stretches, especially in that first half. But I thought LA responded well. They basically took control of the game from the middle of the second quarter on. And while Portland did make that run in the fourth quarter and got it, I think, within 4 or 5 at one point, LA was largely in control, always had an answer. So I would say it's a pedestrian win, right? It's kind of in between a good win and a bad win, especially without AD and him being so instrumental to what they're doing, and them then instead relying on Jackson Hayes, a guy who basically just missed a month, and Christian Koloko, a guy who has been in and out of the rotation depending on the matchup, and is coming off a game against Cleveland in which he didn't play. I think the Lakers should take this away. In the West, I've said it many times, but like a win is a win. You take what you can get. So again, now LA is 6th in the West. They've won 7 of 10 games, and they play again Friday night against Atlanta. That they got a home back-to-back with a shot to get into either the 4 or 5 seed, depending on what happens with the rest of the West tomorrow night. So LA is for again, not the prettiest basketball overall, and I think the offense could be better. I think the rotation could be better. Still getting the new guys acclimated, but still, like you got to rack up wins in the West as you continue to figure things out. And I think that's what LA has been able to do for the past, 3 weeks or so, as they've really since that break that they had from the in-season tournament. And then for me, stat of the night tonight is the Lakers are now 4-1 when they attempt 40 plus threes in a game this season. And interestingly, 3 of those 5 have basically come without AD. Technically, 2 of the 5 have come without AD, but I'm adding the third game in, which was Christmas, when he played 7 minutes and went out in the first quarter and basically wasn't available. So JJ's talked about wanting to shoot more threes. It's been a big point of emphasis. He basically brings it up every game, every media availability. I asked him pregame about the recent trend of basically LeBron, AD, and Austin being the only guys in double figures some nights, and the rest of the guys, Dalton, Rui, Gabe, whoever else, Max, being in single digits, and sort of like what he makes of that trend and why the offense has been so concentrated. And he just said, we don't make shots, and specifically we don't make threes, and we're a low volume shooting team. And then if we're not taking many and we're not making many, then that's a combination for the role players to have their point totals fluctuate. And of course, Max tonight made his threes, and I will hit on that. But just in general, I thought it was interesting that there's this trend of the Lakers playing slightly different without AD and being more of a perimeter team that moves the ball, plays more 5 out, obviously plays smaller when AD is out. And though the small ball look did not work tonight, they were -5 in the 11 minutes without Koloko or Jackson Hayes on the floor. So that continues to be a net negative. In general, you can see they're playing a little bit more 5 out. Their centers, their only roles are screen, roll hard, crash the offensive glass, protect the rim, typically be in drop or maybe up to touch defensively. And I think the simplification of that has at times worked well against Lakers. AD is also rested in some more advantageous matchups, so I think that's played a part in it. But just an interesting thing of 4-1 now when they attempt 40 or more threes, and I think that's more of a shot quality thing than anything. And then takeaway number 1 for me is going to be LeBron puts on his cape. So LeBron had 38 points on 15 of 25 shooting. He hit 7 threes, which is a season high for him. 15 of 25 shooting was the 5th best shooting performance of the season for LeBron. And when you factor in 20 plus shot attempts, it was the 2nd best shooting performance for LeBron this season. So right there behind his season high of 39, he tied Michael Jordan for the most 30-point games in NBA history with 562. And I just thought he made a slew of big plays tonight where it wasn't just the 3-point shooting. Obviously, 21 of the 38 came from beyond the arc, but he was getting downhill. He was finishing well. And again, with this team being athletic and big in the front court, he was still able to finish with guys. I thought his timing on drives and his footwork, the deceleration, getting out in transition, getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line. Like I just thought this was a complete game. And he talked about it afterward that like he felt like he had to step up with AD out, and he did. And I think Max had a career night, and I'm going to touch on that. And several other guys, Austin continues to 4 straight games in double-digit assists. I thought Jackson for a comeback game, what was solid. Christian Koloko had his best game of the season. But to me, it starts with LeBron, and he hit that big 3 to extend it from 4 to 7 late. He also took that charge, and I think he was engaged. And again, this was not a good team, so certainly you look at everything through that lens, and I don't want to over embellish the performance he had, but still, LA needed him to step up offensively, take on a higher usage, score more, and really take on that burden that AD helps shoulder. And this was his highest scoring game since December 6th, so nearly a month for LeBron. So I just thought overall, he put the cape on. He showed he can still do it, and there will be other nights the Lakers need him to do it. And I think it was just a nice reminder of when LeBron wants to get up 25 shots, when he wants to be controlling the offense to the extent that he was, especially in a matchup like this, he can do it. And I think that should give the Lakers some confidence that bigger picture, you can afford to rest AD maybe in some games like this where LeBron could just go out, get you 30, 35. Austin's in a certain groove right now. You can have a guy like Max step up, and you can win a game like this without AD. Takeaway number 2 is Max's career night. So Max had a career high 28 points, also a career high 5 3-pointers. And this just continues the recent ascension from Max. And as a starter over the past 10 games, he's averaging over 12 points a game, shooting about 45% on threes on about 4.5 attempts per game, and 50 something percent from 2-point range. So like he's just been awesome. And I thought what was funny is I asked JJ about Max's performance after the game, and he said it almost didn't start like it didn't start that way. It didn't look like it was trending that way, because early on he felt like Max was not engaged enough defensively, and he also took a couple of mid-range jumpers, which JJ had a long pause of like 5 to 10 seconds, and then eventually admitted that he wanted to wring Max by the neck after taking those 2 jumpers. And he said after that, though, the second shift, he kind of regrouped and took a breath, and then went on to have a career best performance of 28 points. And really, Austin, I think, got to the free throw line late, but like outside of that, it was really LeBron, and then there was kind of a big gap, but Max made up that gap with AD out. So I think Max just continues to play at a high level. I think he should stay in the starting lineup for the foreseeable future. Obviously, depending on what the Lakers do with the trade market, that could potentially change that. But the way that he's playing as a starter, in terms of giving you that point of attack defender who could guard either backcourt spot, could switch on to bigger players. He's really good at fronting and getting into guys' legs. And then he's also a guy that just does the little things of making the extra pass, trying to take charges, diving on the ground for loose balls, boxing out, like all that stuff. In addition to him now shooting the ball at a high level, playing with a certain level of confidence. Like, I just think Max, the growth over the last couple months has been incredible. And he just I would not be surprised if he has a 30-point game at some point. If LeBron or AD's out and the ball is going his way, like he's capable of doing that now. And that was something that I remember first couple weeks of the season, people wanted him out of the rotation and traded, and he did fall out of the rotation. And then since then, he's just been playing better and better progressively each week. And then final, third takeaway before we get into the Q&A is Koloko comes up big. So Christian Koloko had a season high 8 points and a season high 8 rebounds. And I'm sure I'm sort of looking at the chat, try to keep up, but I'm sure some people are going to mention that he did not play against the Cleveland Cavaliers and probably could have helped the Lakers. And I think that's a fair criticism. And it's something I brought up with the small ball groups. I think it's getting to the point where the Lakers have to consider, do they convert Christian to a roster spot at some point? And if they make a trade in the next month and create a roster spot or even 2, is Koloko someone that they consider putting on the official roster? Because I think he's played really well and he's shown a lot of flashes. He's continued to grow. I asked him after the game, since he's entered the rotation, what part of his game does he feel like he's grown the most in? And he just said, just like experience and his feel for the game and understanding things. And defensively, he feels like he's playing the best defense of his career. Offensively, he feels like he's finally developed a rhythm with LeBron and with Austin, and just knows the timing on screens and when to dive and when to roll, and the timing on lobs or pocket passes and all that stuff. So it feels like he's been progressively getting into a better groove. And among the 3 center looks that LA had tonight, there were +8 with him on the floor, +5 with Jackson on the floor, and then -5 without either one in those small ball looks. So I think Christian Koloko, I mean, honestly, depending on how things progress over the next few weeks, there is a limitation obviously with two-way guys and how many games you could play, so that's a bit of a limiting factor. He actually talked about after the game that he was supposed to be in Mexico with South Bay for, I forget if it's the G League showcase or what's going on over there, but or maybe I don't know if they're playing there, but he said he was supposed to be in Mexico with South Bay. And they decided last night that AD was going to be questionable, potentially not play. So they told him, don't go to Mexico, stay here. There's a chance we might need you tomorrow. You might play. And he ends up staying. And then I think being their best center, tonight by a clear margin, in my opinion. Of course, Jackson coming back from the injury had basically missed a month. But I think Christian versus Jackson is honestly might be more of a matchup thing. And then you throw in Christian Wood and then it really becomes a matchup thing. But I think Christian Koloko is throwing his hat in the ring and making this more of a conversation than I think we thought it was even a few weeks ago or even a couple weeks ago. I think he just continues to, with more reps, look more comfortable out there, and the finishing ability, but also the defensive ability. That's, I think, the thing that stands out to me the most is like he is a more natural rim protector and drop defender and just paint protector than a Jackson Hayes or even a Christian Wood. And that's the part of his game that entices me the most as he continues to develop. I would like to see him play more with AD. I doubt we're going to get that. It seems to be even tonight with Jackson and Christian available, they still go small for a stretch and really close the game small for the most part. So Portland also went small, so it's kind of a small versus small thing out there. But I just think Christian Koloko has really impressed me, and I think he's making a case for a potential roster spot depending on how things shake out with the Lakers. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. Before we do that, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you never miss a video, and make sure you like this stream, get those likes up, and drop a comment afterward. Let me know what you want to see this year from me from a content perspective, but also let me know if you have a question that I don't get to on the stream. And then for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, or leave a 5-star review. All right, let's get into it. Let's see. We got a couple of super chats. First one from Rye Guy. AR, Vando, Gabe, Wood, Rui, and a first for Jimmy and Ware. I think, yeah, okay. That's a lot of I'm trying to process like what the rotation looks like after this. I think you're decimating your depth, and I look at it as like, okay, so let's walk through this trade. If you put Jimmy on the team, third best guy, upgrade from Austin, of course, as a number 3 guy. But who is now your fourth best player? Is it Dorian Finney-Smith? Is it Max Christie? I just think giving up AR and Rui in the same trade. I know Rui's not played. He's had a couple of stinkers back to back, but I just think it's like in a vacuum for sure. It's I would say fair value for Jimmy. I would assume that they would get better offers than this, to be quite honest. But I also think from the Lakers' perspective, you're giving up. I would say at least 4, if not 5, potential rotation guys, depending on how Wood and Vando look when healthy, and 2 starters. And again, Jimmy, I think on paper is worth that. I already think the Lakers have some depth issues and like not really enough playoff caliber rotation guys that you can rely on. And if you take out, I would say at least 2 of them at a minimum in AR and Rui, but potentially even more depending on how you feel about Vando, Gabe, etc. Like that's just, it's a little bit too much for me and this is where I think trading D'Lo, the one downside to trading D'Lo in the deal that they made for DFS is the salary matching is a little bit more complicated, and you inevitably come back to potentially putting Austin in a trade. And I think if I'm the Lakers, it's got to be a high bar, and I think even potentially higher than Jimmy, just because if you're going with 3 stars and like no depth, that's just, we saw that movie in 2021-22, right? And I just think in the modern NBA, it's really hard to have 3, and then I think there's some questions for me about like how Jimmy actually fits as the number 3 guy. He's not a plus shooter. He is a guy who's historically needed the ball more in his hands. And I think they could use another shot creator. So I think there's ways. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a good fit and he wouldn't make them better potentially. But I just think for me, if there was a way to not put AR in the deal and keep him as the number 4, and then at least you have him as your 4th guy and you can kind of figure out the rest. But I just think from a depth perspective, you're getting into some dangerous territory where it's like you're relying a lot more on Dalton, and he's been very up and down, and I don't feel great about that. And then it's like, again, DFS, Shake Milton, Max Christie, you are still have a first, I guess, to go try and do something else if you want to see what you can do. But I think some of these, like Levine, Jimmy, I think the one guy who's a little different, or 2 guys, are Brandon Ingram and De'Aaron Fox, because of the money. Those guys in the mid-30s, it's a little easier to get there. You can get there basically with Gabe and Rui plus something else. That to me is a little bit more palatable. But the whole, like, let's take out 4 or 5 of our projected rotation players, that to me is a little bit too rich for my blood, in my opinion. Rossi Simon, thank you for the super chat. Let me know if you have a question. I didn't see it in there. Dotun, thank you for the super chat. Yo. I know JJ is big on analytics, so he has to know about that the play calling has fallen off since the season start. What do I have to do for him to be asked about this pre or post game concerning? So JJ was asked a question about running more pick and roll pre-game, and then he went back to it post-game and said he was thinking about it, and that they have gone away from certain sets offensively that he feels like they could do more of. And this was in relation to the team taking more threes when AD doesn't play. And he was asked about, can you find a way to generate more threes with AD on the floor? Because there's a trend now of the team has been shooting more threes when AD doesn't play. And on one hand, it's kind of obvious, because I would say the other thing, in looking at the box score, like LA only took 14 free throws tonight to Portland's 21. So without AD, points in the paint are going to be down. Free throw attempts are going to be down. So naturally, you probably are going to take more threes, settle for more threes. So I thought they generated a lot of good looks tonight. I think JJ's alluded. So one thing he said recently was that with DFS and Shake, he wants to keep things simple. Now, obviously, the starting lineup is a group that doesn't have DFS or Shake in it and has played together. So I don't have a great answer. I'm just kind of piecing together some of the things that he said recently in terms of trying to simplify things. And also, like tonight, he kind of dug into it a little bit of just saying, like, he felt like recently the spacing has been bad, the screening has been bad, so that they've kind of felt like going to more 2-man game and more pick and roll would be more of a temporary solve to that. But I think obviously in the bigger picture of this, they got to get back to running the offense more the way they were earlier in the season with their spacing and screening principles and just running more organized offense and sets. So I'm with you and some of the recent criticism that has come his way or the coaching staff's way in, with regard to the offense and the nature of it. I pieced together some things, but to your point, like it probably is something worth actually asking from like a concrete perspective of why the offense has gone away from being as organized as it was earlier in the season. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. After Nunn and Gabe, let's not trade with Miami. You know what? This is a good point. If you're the Lakers, I don't know if you want another Heat player, especially a guy like we got to also mention with Jimmy. I mean, dude's what, 34? I want to say he's 35. He's going to be turning 36 this year. He's also in a contract. He's got a contract situation where he's got the player option, which is a big number, but he also wants an extension or a new deal. So if the contract was maybe a little bit different and they still had D'Lo and there was a way to put D'Lo in instead of AR, I would be more open to it. I feel like trading D'Lo has limited some of their bigger move options, in my opinion, because I just think at that point you're really decimating the depth, and I don't know the drop off, you forget even like the roster depth. Let's just say you think they could win with 6 or 7 like quality guys. The drop off from Jimmy to whoever's number 4 in terms of the offensive pecking order is so steep that it just gives me like you basically turn into the Phoenix Suns, and maybe you're better defensively because you have Jimmy, you have DFS, you have AD, but you could also argue you're not as good offensively from like a shot making perspective as Phoenix. So you're like a different look to compared to Phoenix, but you're very similar in my opinion in terms of like 3 all-star. Like Jimmy's better than Bradley Beal, so it's not quite apples to apples, but I would even then argue Phoenix might have a better supporting cast than that version of the Lakers post trading 5 guys for Jimmy. Though I do like Ware, I would assume that they wouldn't want to give up Ware. That's another part of this is that, you know, given how young he is, I think they would probably fight the Lakers on that. AR, Gabe Vincent, and Rui is better than Fox and Keon. Oh, you're saying trade them for Fox and Keon. Okay. JHS for Kessler. Would you? I would trade JHS for Kessler. That's a no-brainer. Of course, you got to most likely attach an unprotected first. And I would do that in a heartbeat. AR, Gabe Vincent, and Rui for Fox and Keon. It's close. Like I still kind of come back to similar to the Jimmy argument that I think that the drop off from your number 3 to number 4 is like even bigger than it is now. Like I think there's a decent size drop off between AR to Rui or Max or whoever you want to put at number 4, but I think it gets even bigger in this instance. Now I will say with Fox, he's younger. I think he's a guy who could grow longer term with AD as like 2-man game, pick and roll partner. He can be kind of co-face of the franchise longer term. So I think there's more. I would rather have Fox than Jimmy, I guess, in like a vacuum. If there was a way to do Vando instead of AR and keep AR, I would do that. With AR in it, it gets a little bit more iffy again, just because I think the Lakers already made an offense for defense trade, trading D'Lo for DFS, and then now kind of trading 2 of your more important offensive players for 1 that is an upgrade. But again, I think from a depth and like fielding quality lineup perspective, I think all of a sudden you're relying on some guys that I don't know that the Lakers want to be relying on right now. So it's interesting. I'm not outright saying no. I am interested in Fox if the Lakers can get it. The one issue with Fox right now, I think, is just that if there's a bidding war, the Lakers have limited assets, and a team like Houston or San Antonio or Oklahoma City, it wouldn't really make sense, but like there are teams out there that have more assets that they can offer more first than the Lakers can offer, and they can offer better younger players. And especially if LA's hesitant to put AR in a potential deal, you know, Houston can throw in 2 or 3 interesting prospects and 2 or 3 picks, and like they kind of beat the Lakers offer. So I think the Lakers are in a little bit of a tricky spot there. Plus, I don't know what the other thing is. Like, I don't know what Sacramento would want in terms of, are they trying to remain competitive and almost like do a soft rebuild around Sabonis, in which case AR makes more sense. If they're looking long term, like let's just tear it all down, let's suck, let's tank, then you could make a case like, you know, they might value something else. So I think it just depends what they want. Super chat from G Isobar. Thank you for the super chat. Rui, Gabe, JHS, Wood, Jack's picks for JV, Brogdon, Champagne. Well, what picks are we talking about here? Because I've been on the record like I'm not as sold on like the Valanciunas Brogdon fits. Brogdon's a guy who really struggles to stay healthy through the course of an 82 game season. I think in theory now he makes more sense because there's no D'Lo, and if he's like that bench general running the second unit and playing either backcourt spot, like I think that makes some sense. JV as a backup center, sure. If you could do this with the 2 first-round picks, sorry, excuse me. Let me retract that. The 2 second-round picks, not the 2 first-round picks. I would consider that the 2 or even one of the first, definitely not the 2 first-round picks. 1 first-round pick, I'm not as sold on. I've already said I wouldn't do a first for JV. If you're throwing in Brogdon, you get close. Like ideally, the Lakers could still protect their picks, but they're in a little bit of a tricky spot there because they've traded all their seconds in those years, so they can't conventionally protect it. I'm not even sure if they can protect it at all. I probably should figure that out. And then, otherwise, it's like it is. I don't know. I guess it comes down to like how you view Rui ultimately, but I'm not against it depending on the price, but I wouldn't love it, honestly, if you're giving up a first. I think you could probably get, like, I'd rather give up a JHS and a first for Walker Kessler, not take anyone out of the rotation and get, in my opinion, a better player than, frankly, anyone involved from the Washington side. Shbugin, sorry. Outside of Jonas, Fox, in parentheses, BS, and Kessler, are there any players the team is reasonably connected to? Any news you can break here? Well, I got to be careful with that because I do tend to get aggregated, and I'm not really supposed to break news on my show. It's really supposed to more so go through The Athletic. Not really. Like, I think I've already reported on the names that have been linked to them, like Robert Williams. Looking at a night like tonight, Robert Williams is a name. I thought it was interesting he didn't play. I'm not quite sure. I don't think he's injured. So I guess it's kind of funny that he's like their 3rd string center and they want a first-round pick for him. But Kuzma, Robert Williams, it's kind of been, maybe there's a Portland sleeper guy. Like I think that the Jeremy Grant ship has probably sailed. I really like Toumani Camara. I think he would be a great fit for this group in terms of like a perimeter. Like I thought tonight, like the slashing, the finishing, the shooting, the defense, pressure. Like he's really solid, and I think the price would be high for him. But Robert Williams, I think if he can stay healthy, would help a lot. Otherwise, it's Brogdon. Cam Johnson, I guess technically they could still be in the sweepstakes, although it would have made more sense to trade for him in a bigger DFS deal. So I would say no real new names. Like, Sam Amick of The Athletic just mentioned them and Fox. I'm, as aforementioned, a little bit skeptical of that, but in terms of just like the bidding war in LA keeping up with that, I don't think they have enough assets. But no real new names yet. But if there are, I will report it on The Athletic and talk about it on here more in depth. Kane Carter, Rui for Ayo, Jalen Smith, Gabe JHS Wood for Nick Richards and Cody Martin. I really like the second trade. First one's interesting because it does, you get deeper. I guess my read on this is I think the Lakers are higher on Rui than you are. And I think they'd probably not do the first trade, but I do like Ayo. It's an interesting trade. Definitely the second one I would do. No questions asked. You get bigger, and I think Nick Richards is a better player than, JHS is out of the rotation. Wood isn't healthy. Nick Richards bolsters your backup 5 spot, and Cody is a smaller 3-and-D wing, kind of profile. You're taking back 4 guys and you're sending out 4, so you're not creating a roster spot, but it's interesting. I think the Lakers value Rui more than that, but I don't think it's a crazy trade. And just for the record, I'm going to go about an hour, and I know I always say that, but it's back to back, so Fang Charlie, we shouldn't play Rui at center though. LOL. Yeah, I agree. Especially like, to be honest, if you're gonna play someone at center, it should be DFS. Okay, let me take a step back. I think we have to live in the reality that the Lakers are probably going to play small ball, and that's just going to be a part of their DNA. Maybe the sample size gets big enough and they're so bad at it that JJ decides not to, but it seems to be that something that he wants to try and test and evaluate and assess and see if it's possible. And it seems to be one of those things that he's like, if we just kind of get through the reps of it maybe being a little clunky or not as effective, we'll eventually get out on the other side kind of stronger, like similar to developing like a young player. You kind of throw them into the fire, you let them figure it out, and then they are supposed to come out on the other side, hopefully better. I think that's kind of how you've used the small ball situation of, let's just throw these lineups out there, hope they figure it out. And it's honestly not much worse than putting Koloko or Jackson Hayes or whatever out there. I disagree with that. And I think the lineup data has proven that so far they've had some good shifts or good bursts of, and even some good games of small ball. But for the most part, the small ball lineups have been getting killed. They've been horrible defensively. I don't think the Lakers have the defensive personnel to play small ball because, well, I think they have such, like, you almost have to go something like Max, Cam, LeBron, Rui, DFS, and just switch across all 5 positions. But then the problem is I don't think offensively you have enough. You don't really have that second playmaker, ball handler, shot creator out there. So I think they would need to do probably another trade to get like if you got Brandon Ingram, for example, then okay, that makes a little bit more sense because he's a proven ball handler, shot creator, ISO guy within the half court, and he fits the switchable profile defensively. So you could build out lineups that are smaller that would make sense with Ingram in there. And I guess if he's replacing Rui in this theoretical trade, if it's like DFS, LeBron, Ingram, Max and Austin, or Max and Cam, whatever, that makes a little bit more sense, though I still have some concerns about the spacing and just sort of the overall offensive threats out there. But I talked about it, yesterday yesterday. If you're going to go small, you have to either be so good offensively where the opponent can't guard you, or you have to be so good defensively that you're locking them down. And like you're trying to create an advantage by going small. And the Lakers, I don't think have been certainly not good enough offensively with some of the recent shot making, but also defensively, they've just been, like once you get past the 3-point line, it's basically a layup line. And, or you're getting offensive rebounds, or guys are back cutting along the baseline. Like it's just not working. So I know it kind of worked tonight. Portland also downsized. They went small to close the game. But Portland's one of the 5 worst teams in the league. So I don't know if that's like the best sample size. And even then, LA was outscored going small. They when Koloko went out, they were up by 10. They ended up winning by 8. So they lost the final 7 minutes by 2 points. And it doesn't sound like much, but like this is theoretically a lineup that should be winning you that stretch, right, against a lottery team, and it didn't. And if you can't go small against Portland and win those minutes, like I'm a little skeptical. Outside of Golden State is kind of its own thing, but outside of maybe that exception and maybe a couple other teams, for the most part, I don't think right now we've seen enough in a positive sense from the Lakers' small ball looks. K. Norris, seen a report that DFS isn't fully healthy and he's been dealing with an injury or two. Do you have any knowledge of that? So I know he's dealing with some ankle thing. We didn't talk to him tonight, so I didn't get further clarity. It is probably something worth following up with JJ. No one has asked about it, but that could be partly why his minutes have been down, though he obviously played. He closed. I like that he closed the game. He closed the game over Cam. I guess quick DFS thoughts, like didn't shoot the ball well, did make his first 3, but I think once again, plus 11 off the bench, led the bench in plus minus, led the entire team in plus minus. And he's another guy who I think is just setting screens, cutting, moving, always sort of relocating offensively, and then defensively is taking on guards, wings, bigs, switching across all positions and just providing a ton of value. So the offense has not been there, but I never thought that this was an offensive addition outside of the shooting, which I think should normalize. He should shoot the ball better. But outside of that, I think you've seen he moves the ball. He's constantly cutting, screening, diving for offensive rebounds. Had 2 offensive rebounds again tonight. And I think just makes winning plays. So he's a guy that I don't think it's ever going to really pop in the box score unless he has a night where he hits like 3 or 4 threes or has like 8, 9, 10 rebounds. But outside of that, like I just think he's a really solid player at like a bunch of different parts of the game. And it's not necessarily going to be the sexiest stats or the best box score stats, but he is helping the Lakers when he's out there and they're winning his minutes. And like, that's all you can really ask for. Ron's Key, how about Bruce Brown and Pirtle? I did hear the name Pirtle tonight from someone. I no real updates on Bruce. Like I did report the previous Bruce Brown interest, so he is a name to keep an eye on. No real like new information there with either one of those guys, but certainly I think both guys are candidates. Jackson, 1 hour, Jovan time equals 2 hours. Not tonight, but we'll see. I say Jovan time is like saying Filipino time. I don't know if that's a joke I can make, but I think I understand what you're getting at. King Rifa _Chifa. What up, Jovan? Let's wait. We do need a good backup big, but we could find a point guard in the buyout market, or Gabe a first and second for Trey Mann and Nick Richards. Well, so yeah, you set it up there nicely. I'm just to continue what I've already reported and to try and be as clear as possible. You know, my understanding of the situation is the Lakers are in evaluation mode in terms of the roster, and they're hopeful that they are going to be getting back. They just got back Jackson Hayes, that potentially Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood could be returning relatively soon. I don't want to throw out a timeline because I don't know, and also the timelines have continually been pushed back, so we'll see what that looks like. But if, let's say it's January 21st and Vano's played a few games, Christian's played a few games. At that point, Dorian and Shake have been on the team for almost a month. I think we have a clearer picture of what this group looks like, what the weaknesses are, and what the identity is, and what they need to. Because I will say, this isn't breaking news by any means, but like just in talking to people before and after the game, there's a lot of differing opinions as to like what the biggest need is of this team. Like some people go backup center. Some people go, now that D'Lo's gone, they need another playmaker. Some people still say like there's not a lot of two-way wing play. Like you could say Max, you could say Dorian if he's hitting threes, Rui if he's defending and engaged. But like there's still a dearth of two-way wing talent on this team. And like, so that could be arguably a need if they want to better match up with an OKC or a Dallas or a Boston. So I mean, you can make a case the Lakers have like 3 or 4 needs, and they might only be able to plug like 1 or 2 of those. So it just kind of comes down to like, what do they view as the biggest need? And I know people always are hammering the backup center spot, but I also look at, and granted, like tonight maybe was partly an exception due to the opponent, but on a night like tonight, you could have easily gone 24 and 24 in terms of Jackson Hayes and Christian Koloko, or, you know, Jackson's played 30 plus minutes before, and I know it was his first game back. So maybe there's minutes restriction. JJ didn't mention that, but maybe there was an unofficial one. But even on a night like tonight, where the opponent was big, there was no AD, they still played small ball for 11 minutes. So I have a little bit of a, like, I just wonder if they add a Valanciunas, if they add a Jakob Poeltl, like, does that player get the full trust and empowerment from the coaching staff, or is it a little bit of maybe the front office or team looking at it like we might need this, but then the coaching staff still has kind of a different vision for, because JJ just tended to go smaller. Like that's just, at least at, the front court. In the back court, I think he's played largely the right guys and like, kind of figured that out. But there hasn't been as many like 3-guard lineups, but when faced with a decision between small and big, similar to Darvin and even similar to Frank Vogel a little bit there toward the end, he's tended to go smaller. This is a good point here from Paolo. I think the small ball lineups will work better if you replace Vando with Rui. Yeah. Or I guess if you replace Rui with Vando, but yeah. Glenn S. Hot take: Dalton playing bad, so teams don't want him. I mean, I would say his trade value's certainly not gone up, right? Shabugan, enough reasonableness. Want to talk about the Barkley proving JJ right during his absurd rant? Fun fact: I've actually not heard the rant. I got it was sent to me during the game, and during the game, I'm working, post game, go talking to everybody, then I go transcribe, and then I come here to try and go live as quickly as possible. So I've actually not heard the rant. I've heard the gist of it, but I'm going to listen to it probably after the show. Nostaljosh, not sure what it means, but LA is 16-7 versus the West. And thank you for the super chat. Also, thank you, Shabugan, for the super chat. I mean, that's good. It is good. So looking at it, and I'm sure they're 500. Like I take more stock in the record versus 500 teams, personally. But so they're still 6-10 against teams 500 and above, 13-4 against teams below 500. And if you look at it from the West perspective, they beat Phoenix, who's now under 500. They beat Sacramento 4 times. So that's a big part of that West record being good. They've now beaten Portland twice. They've beaten New Orleans, and they've beaten Utah twice. So they've smacked the bottom of the West. I guess if you look at the top, 0-1 against OKC, 2-1 against Memphis, haven't played Houston, 0-1 against Denver, haven't played Dallas, haven't played the Clippers, and 1-2 against Minnesota. And then I guess if we just go through the whole West, Golden State, they're 1-0, San Antonio, they're 2-0, if I'm not mistaken. So they've certainly cleaned up against the teams outside the play-in currently, in Phoenix, Sacramento, Portland, Utah, New Orleans. That's a bulk of that record. And then a little bit more, I guess the 5 teams ahead of them, they are 2-3 against. So not as encouraging with the top of the West, but still a bigger sample size. They're about to go play Houston and Dallas. That will give us a better idea, though Dallas is without Luka. They'll have, I think they played Denver like 3 times in February. So that'll be, a nice kind of idea of like a measuring stick and where they're at. Okay, let me make sure I'm caught up with super chats. IS, thoughts on Anthony Edwards' comments lately? Big market guy. Yeah, I mean, no, I want to, I got to be careful what I say. I'm not, I'm with you. I think there's something there, and whether it's the Lakers or another big market team, I could see him. It feels like he's a guy who probably makes that jump at some point. And like just imagining him in LA, or if he was a Laker, if he was a Knick, even if he was a Bull, like he would, I think, be at a different stratosphere in terms of his celebrity, like just being face of the league, all that stuff. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Is the record better if this had been Max all year? Yeah, but I think Max had to. So one thing I haven't plugged yet, and I was actually going to plug it tonight, and I forgot to plug it. I did a Q&A with Max on The Athletic, and it got buried because it went up Sunday morning, and then that was the morning that the Lakers made the trade. So I tweeted it out, and I posted it on my Instagram. And make sure you guys are following me there if you're only following me on YouTube. But we talked about like going through and he called it adversity. I wasn't sure what to call it. I was like, I don't know what you would call it at the beginning of the season. He was like adversity, and he felt like he needed to go through that to recalibrate. And he talked about changing his social circle, which I thought was interesting because Max, from my understanding, is not like a big nightlife partying guy. He's pretty low key. He plays a lot of video games. He watches anime. Like he's very much like a 21-year-old, but like a young, I would say even, a young, he's a young person, right? Now he's an old soul, but he's not really like a big going out guy. So I thought that was an interesting thing that he said, and not really sure what that meant. But yeah, I mean, I think he had to go through that experience to I think like he talked about thinking too much and just needing to take a step back, take a breath. And I think even tonight was like an example of maybe games in the past, he would have had a rough start and then it just would have snowballed and maybe he gets pulled. He plays fewer minutes. Tonight, he found a way to just regroup himself and put himself in a position to have a career night. So of course, if they got this version of Max, like he would have probably taken the starting spot from D'Lo when Cam did, if not potentially sooner. And he would have been playing at least a lot off the bench to start. And sure, I think the Lakers probably have an extra win or two. Maybe they win the Orlando game, or maybe they win one of the Phoenix game, the fifth game of the season, fourth game that they lost. So I think they probably have a couple more wins, but I don't. You could always play the what if game. Super chat from Diego Cardona. If Rob can successfully pull off JHS and whatever draft capital necessary for Kessler, I'll forgive him for not making a single move over the summer. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a hell of a move for the Lakers if they were able to pull that off. I think even if it ends up being removing that protection on the 2027, or even at most, I think I would consider a pick swap in addition. I don't think I would do a 2026 or 2028 because there's so much uncertainty about where the Lakers are going to be in the shorter term, like next few years. But if it was like 2029 and maybe a 2030 pick swap, I would consider it only because I think this is like a rare move where you get better in the short term and the long term. You set yourself up with a potential starting center longer term, or at a minimum, like a high level backup. And you also are not taking anyone out of the rotation. Because as I got back to, what I talked about earlier with Fox or Jimmy Butler or Brandon Ingram or whoever, some of these 3, 4, 5 for 1 trades with guys who project to be in the Lakers rotation, like you're not losing any, like JHS is not playing. So it's a rare trade where like you don't lose anything in your rotation. You get a young guy still on a rookie deal. He can help you now. He could also help you longer term and grow into a bigger role with you. I just think it's like a all around win. Now I would not give up 2 firsts. That's where I would draw the line. But if it was a first and a second, a first and removing the protection, first and a swap, I would have to really think about it and evaluate all the options and like what's an alternative potentially. But again, I think this, if there was a way to pull it off, it's a no-brainer. But I will say, look, I think Rob deserves credit for the DFS trade because I think there had been, I did report DFS was one of the guys that they were targeting in the shorter term, but there had been criticism about the Lakers not making a move for 20, almost 22 months. So he went out and made a move right before the new year. It was also a move that saved them money, gave them some flexibility under the second apron and cut their tax bill. And I think got a guy that could, depending on how the rest of the year goes, like he's got a player option. He could resign this summer if he opts out. So also like a potential longer term piece instead of D'Lo, who, if they didn't move him, was going to be leaving this summer. Like that was going to be happening. So I think it's all around. Like, and they just got a solid wing defender who was shooting 43%, having a career year from beyond the arc. Entering this, it's been 2 games. So just like with Max, like don't overreact to 2 games yet with DFS. Going 5 more minutes. So if you have questions, get them in. Game time 206. I mean, this has been my dream scenario that I've been throwing out is Kessler and Cam Johnson. I don't think it's going to be possible now with no D'Lo. It's going to be tough to get to the Cam Johnson money. I guess you have to give up Rui. They're also asking for 2 first-round picks, apparently, or reportedly that's been out there. I've also reported on that, but I wasn't sure what the more recent prices were. But it seems like it's been two first. So I don't think that's realistic anymore, but who knows? Maybe. I see people talking about Miles Turner. I continue to not hear much on him. It seems like the Pacers are keeping him for now. RGN, Cal Ford, Jovan or swap literally could be a top 10 or a top 5 pick. It could be. I mean, I would assume that the Lakers are probably have another star by 2030. I think if they're going to have a down period, it would probably be, let's say LeBron plays 1 more year, then potentially that period of like 2026 to 2028, maybe into 2029. But I would not be surprised if they reload really quickly with another star. It's a risk though. Like, and maybe, I would, my read is they probably would not give up a pick swap for Kessler. Cause I think if they would, he'd probably be a Laker. I'm just telling, like, I believe in being more aggressive. I would not give up a second first round pick, but I also think, again, I'm probably a little bit higher on Kessler than some are. And I'm also just higher on like the asset management of getting a guy in your rookie or still on a rookie contract, a guy who's basically averaging a double-double and 2 blocks a game, efficient finisher, effective rim protector. Like he checks. We've seen the formula of the JaVale Dwight next to AD. I think he's in that. Like I think he's better than JaVale. I think Dwight, because of the physicality and the job he did against Jokic in the conference finals, like I'd put, it's hard to compare, I guess, but like I'd say Kessler's better offensively probably, but of Dwight at that point, but Dwight's better defensively and the physicality was a big part of that. But like we've seen that work, and I think Kessler would be the best big to play with AD since that championship season. You got, okay. Art of War, need another 3 and D and a big. That's kind of where I'm at. So I will say the thing, and I touched on Austin a little bit earlier, but Austin has taken a leap in front of our eyes from a playmaking perspective. So 4 straight games with double-digit assists. Crane just put out a tweet with all of his playmaking grades for or from B-Ball Index, and he was basically an A in like every category. Passing efficiency, he was a D, and I think that's because of the turnovers, and he has sometimes struggled with that. But the volume and just the like, he's just been playmaking at a very high level lately. I do have a slight fear that if the Lakers' only 2 reliable like playmakers are LeBron and AD, I mean, LeBron and AR, and AD to a lesser extent, though they've kind of phased he hasn't been as much of a hub of the offense lately, and maybe they go back to that. But in terms of like guard perimeter guys creating, right now the only two reliable guys are LeBron and Austin. I think Shake Milton is more of a scorer than a playmaker. Gabe is also more of like a streaky scorer shooter than a playmaker. That would be like the one potential concern of like, can you, and a guy like Ingram, which just to go like, he kind of can theoretically check a couple of these boxes in terms of, he's not really a 3D wing, but he's at least a big wing, and he could also help with the playmaking, shot creation, though it does dramatically change the look of the team, the feel of the team, the identity of the team. But I almost want, like, I kind of almost think they should go for another wing and another playmaker, and maybe put the big, unless it's Kessler or Robert Williams or maybe even Pirtle. I might prefer a guard over like, for example, Valanciunas, to be honest. I think if you're Lakers, you need to go defensive big, and then, whatever, like, or wing and defensive big. If you're going with an offensive big, I don't personally like that as much. Jay, Kessler could never attempt a dunk from the free throw line. Yeah, I mean, JaVale's more athletic, but he wasn't like a double 2 blocks guy. I know he was a good shot blocker, but I think Kessler's a little bit more stable and reliable. Diego Cardona, good night, everyone. Hopefully I wake up to another trade. You never know. Okay, I have crossed the 1 hour threshold. No, I know you're joking, Jay. It's all good. But okay, wait. Hen L, is Utah still shopping Kessler? It's a great question. You hear different things from different people. I think they probably have to be blown away with an offer, but it sounds like their asking price has been 2 picks, similar to Cam Johnson, and I don't think anyone's going to meet 2 picks for Kessler. So I feel like if the Lakers really put a first on the table, Utah would have to seriously consider that, but we'll see. Jackson, Jovan is the GOAT. I think that's a great place to end it here. I'm gonna wrap now before I get sucked into the vortex of answering more questions as I tend to do. But good news is I will be back tomorrow night. We'll be back in about 24 hours. So be on the lookout for tomorrow's stream after the game against the Hawks. As always, and as Jay says, I am available for a 10-day. Don't forget. So if the Lakers really want if they want a 6'6" shooter, then please sign me. But in all seriousness, that'll do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you don't miss a future video or live stream, and make sure you like and comment on this video. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. Don't take it personal. It's not personal. I know I've seen a couple of people comment that. I try to go through the chat, try to go through the super chat, and sometimes things fall through the cracks, but please let me know in the comments if you have a question. I'll do my best to answer it. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back in 24 hours after the Lakers Hawks game. I will talk to you then.